Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Joining us today is data scientist and researcher Dr. Pooja Sarin, who completed her PhD in Information Systems and Analytics at IIT Delhi. Today, we will discuss the dark side of social media engagement, examining how individual psychological susceptibility, structural platform affordances, and algorithmic reinforcement all collide to create compulsive digital loops. Pooja, welcome to the show.
Many thanks, Professor. I'm very glad for this opportunity and looking forward to have word with you conversation on this topic as it's a very relevant topic nowadays.
Pooja, you spend quite a bit of your time analyzing millions of data points, tracking the dark side of social media addiction. As a data scientist, you know how the algorithms are built to keep us scrolling. What does your own personal relationship with your smartphone look like? Do you follow strict rules or are you just hooked as the rest of us?
Knowing how something is built doesn't make you immune to it, right? So I think that's actually one of the most important things I have learned through this research. So I'm very aware that the notifications, infinite scroll, and the algorithmic recommendations, these are deliberately engineered to bring you back repeatedly. And I still feel that pull. And yesterday only, I deleted Facebook and Instagram from my phone so that I can be more focused toward research in these 2 months in my summer. So, yeah. And the difference is that my work has made me more conscious of what it's happening. So, my relationship with the smartphone, it is not about rejection. It's about trying to use it intentionally rather than letting the platform steer my attention without me realizing it. So and honestly, that's the bigger lesson from my research. And digital well-being, which we talk about a lot nowadays, can't be framed only as an individual responsibility. Even the highly informed users, they operate inside environments in such a way, specifically they are it's designed to maximize their engagement. And that's why platform design and governance, they matter just as much as a personal awareness.
Wonderful. Pooja, your PhD journey is impressive. I'm curious, why did you want to study the dark side of digital behavior?
It wasn't just one dramatic moment. It was more of a slow realization that something was missing from the conversation. When I started my PhD journey, the social media engagement, it was almost always discussed as a positive metric, like likes, more followers, and more time on platform. So, but we almost never ask, why does that engagement become compulsive? And when does it stop being a free choice? So, a significant turning point for me was looking of these late night activity in social media data. We were in hostels, and I was saying, like at dining table, everyone was hooked to their phones, not talking to each other, like earlier 10 years ago. So yeah, and when people are repeatedly engaging at 2 a.m. and the activity is tied to high levels of social feedback and interaction, and it raises a real question about whether the platform is still serving them or whether they are serving the platform. So, what truly captured my attention was realizing this wasn't simply about self control, it was about how individual psychology interacts with the platform design. And some people, tendencies are amplified by the way the platform are built, and that's a much more interesting and more solvable problem than just telling the people to put down their phones.
Good motivation for sure. Pooja, even though most behavioral studies on social media addiction rely on surveys where people guess how much time they spend online, your thesis analyzed over 1 million nocturnal tweets, and over 55,000 user timelines.
Yeah.
Why did you choose real world data to understand actual behavior?
My background is in computer science and engineering. So, analyzing data this way through social media, that was natural inclination. And to the management research, I was a new candidate in that management research. I learned about survey as well. So, I was confused during my research plan, but what made me to do this? So, basically, late night activity provides what I think of as a behavioral window into the compulsion. So when someone continues to engage in the social media during the hours that are normally associated with rest and sleep, it suggests that the platform is occupying your attention even when every biological and social so is signaling to disengage, right? So that said, I want to be careful. Nocturnal tweeting in my research functions as a behavioral indicator of persistent engagement, not a clinical diagnosis. It's a signal worth investigating. So, this is where the behavioral trace data adds value over the self reports. So, if you ask someone how often they use social media, they will often underestimate, or either because memory is imperfect and there are social desirability biases as well, and people don't always want to admit the extent of their usage. So behavioral trace data shows what people actually do over time, so when they post, how persistently they engage, and what content they interact with. I see the two methods as genuinely this complementary. Surveys tells us people to interpret their behavior, and digital traces, it shows us the behavior itself. So together we get a much richer and more honest picture. So that was mixed method research. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, and if you have access to such a rich data, then why not make a good point for
Yeah,
sure.
at that time it was like through API, academic API, and we used to collect Twitter data, which nowadays it's not possible.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, it was a good call. Pooja, in your first study, you built an addiction proxy score by tracking how much people interact with likes, retweets, and replies. You found that a user's listed count and followers count were the strongest predictors of addictive behavior. Does this
Yes.
mean the platform's public approval, getting those likes and followers, is what actually drives the addiction, or rather than the content we are reading?
This was one of the most striking like findings in my research. Listed count and this follower count, it represents far more than popularity. They represent visibility, the perceived audience, and the social stakes attached to the person's online presence. So when a user feels that an audience is watching, so or they are responding or expecting content, the engagement becomes more psychologically charged. So a like or retweet is not just a number, then it becomes a form of public social validation. So for users who are particularly sensitive to recognition, that feedback can become powerfully reinforcing, and it encourages them to return more frequently, more persistently, and monitor reactions closely. So
Mm,
there is also something I describe as a performative pressure. Users begin to feel that they need to stay visible, responsive, and alert, and relevant as well all the time. So
mm,
at that point, logging off, it doesn't feel neutral. It begins to feel like a kind
mm,
of loss or
mm,
withdrawal. So the
mm,
platform has shifted from a communication tool to a stage where
mm,
identity and this social approval are
mm.
continuously negotiated. So
Wow.
I do want to note that my findings establish strong associations, not definitive causality, which are my future work, of course. So,
Mm,
but the platform is but the pattern, it's clear, and the visibility and the audience related feedback. These are central elements in the reinforcement
mm.
environment surrounding the compulsive use.
Yeah. So very
So,
very interesting. Those public approvals, like,
Yeah,
keep feeding into your, I guess, your own ego, keep going and never ending quest here.
yeah. Infinite scroll, infinite loop. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we are stuck.
Yeah. Pooja, your findings show something really interesting. Still photos consistently get higher engagement than videos or animations. In communication science, there's a theory called media richness, which basically looks at how much information a format can pass to a brain. Why do simple still photos outperform moving videos when it comes to keeping us hooked on a text heavy platform?
So on the content format side, the photos, these consistently outperform the videos in the generating engagement in my data. So the likely explanation is cognitive efficiency. So images are basically immediate, emotionally salient, and require minimal effort to consume. So that they are extreme effective triggers for rapid interaction, way that no longer video content isn't. But if you're scrolling and image is there, so it impacts immediately as compared to video, because you need to stop, and but image, it just cognitive more efficient. That's why through media richness theory, the photos were carrying more like more engagement. Yeah.
Interesting. Pooja, your research highlights an interesting cultural split. You found that informational content dominates Indian social media, while social and entertainment content drives how people use it in the US. How should platform designers change digital well-being features to match these cross-cultural differences?
In the US, the social and entertainment content was more prominent from the data set and suggesting different dominant online gratifications. Basically, we are at platforms for gratification. There is user gratification theory as well. So, the policy implication here is significant. So, one size fits all screen time restrictions miss the real question. So, what is actually driving the persistent engagement in a given social and cultural context. So in some settings, the priority may be addressing misinformation or attention capture through informational feeds, and in others it may be social comparison, entertainment, how it's immersed, and the validation seeking. So effective policy needs to be engaged with that specificity. Also the personality types, the how they perceive the data, it's also different for the users. For example, if there is an image flash, and the way how I perceive and the way you perceive, it's totally different. It can be more impactful on me. So personality type and the cultural context, all these are important.
Pooja, in your second study, you looked at 9 different dark personality traits to see which ones drive social media dependency. And you found that psychological entitlement emerged as a key driver of addictive engagement. Why does a sense of entitlement drive addiction so much more than other traits like narcissism?
So basically, we created a word dictionary corresponding to each personality trait. And we can think of it this way. Some people don't just enjoy getting likes, they expect them. So that's the distinction that matters enormously here. And the psychological entitlement in this context refers to a strong, persistent expectation of recognition, special treatment, and validation. And on social media, that maps almost perfectly onto the platform reward architecture, likes, replies, this follower growth, and the public acknowledgement. So every notification becomes a confirmation of status. So every period of silence, it's like something to correct. And when that expectation needs an algorithm that is specifically designed to reward activity and visibility, you get a reinforcing loop that is very difficult to exit. And the platform isn't creating the entitlement, but it is supercharging it. So it provides the exact type of feedback that makes the tendency more consequential. So, and here's the most important nuance is here. This is not the story that about weak-willed individuals. The same psychological tendency in a platform environment without constant feedback and public metrics, it might not produce the same outcomes. Yeah.
Pooja, you uncovered a paradox when looking at sadism. You noted that while sadism was highly visible in the language people used, it did not really predict whether someone would be addicted to the platform. What does it mean that internet trolls are highly vocal, but aren't necessarily the ones hooked on the platform's feedback loops?
Like what appears in the language, it doesn't mean what drives that behavior. So during in this stressful period of COVID times pandemic, and the India in 2021, it was experiencing, in fact, the entire world that was experiencing the most severe COVID waves globally. And the online discourse naturally it becomes more darker, and more anger, more hostility, and more aggression was there. So the linguistic presence of this sadism related cues was very high in the context we analyzed. But the frequency of expression is not the same as the behavioral reinforcement. So when we run our deep learning model, that was descriptives. In descriptive sadism showed the higher value. And expressing hostility in the post doesn't mean that it is the primary reason why someone keeps returning to the platform obsessively. So entitlement, by contrast, that psychological entitlement, it maps directly to what the platform rewards. So visibility, recognition, and the social feedback. So it is tied to the very this mechanisms of the reward structure.
Mhm.
So that's why, and this also serves as an important methodological caution. We couldn't over pathologize users based on the emotional tone of their content alone. Extreme or aggression language can reflect this situational. It could be situational, like frustration, or it was a crisis condition at that time, or the collective distress. So not necessarily it is the primary mechanism driving compulsive engagement.
Pooja, in your third study, you synthesize your work into susceptibility, structure, and reinforcement SSR framework. You argue that addiction isn't just an individual weakness, but a product of how human psychology and technology interact. Can you break down how individual susceptibility, platform structures, and algorithmic reinforcement collide to hook a user?
Basically, the third study was framed from the results from study one and two, and the core argument of SSR it is simple, but I think it is generally important. We can't blame the individual for an outcome that emerges from a system specifically designed to work against certain psychological tendencies. So here the SSR framework, susceptibility, structure, and reinforcement, and these three pillars these work together. And the susceptibility it refers to the individual psychological tendencies like validation seeking, entitlement, sensitivity to social feedback, and they make certain users more responsive towards rewards and the platforms provide. And the structure it refers to this platform design, this algorithmic recommendations, public engagement metric, infinite scroll, if the content is media rich, and all the mechanisms that makes continuous engagement feel effortless and natural, right? So and the reinforcement is what basically it's like a loop. So reinforcement is a reward loop itself, and likes, notification, the follower growth is increasing, the signals that bring you back and tell you that yeah, engagement was worth it. And even in tier 2 cities, even our parents, they are hooked towards this social media like platforms, and they're also enjoying it. And even, yeah, let's not talk about Gen Z's and alpha millennials, but even boomers are liking it. So
Mm.
critically, none of these elements alone necessarily produces this addiction like engagement. A psychological, this susceptible person in a naturally designed environment, he might be absolutely fine. But the same person inside an engagement, this optimized platform with a constant social feedback, that's where the compulsive usage it can emerge, and it is the interaction that matters. So an SSR framework, it reframes it as a socio-technical problem, because earlier the social media which emerged, for example, there is a documentary, The Social Dilemma, in 2020, and
Mm.
the Social Network movie, it was in 2010. And from 2010 to 20, we see there are lots of paper discussing the political discourse or social media engagement from marketing perspective. And yeah, when I applied to B schools, they asked the question how your research is contributing towards a B management school, because it's talking against it. But mental health and well-being is also equally important. So and it's not a failure of a willpower of a person. It's what happens when individual vulnerabilities, they meet deliberately designed this amplification system. So, and that reframing that has this direct consequences for where we place responsibility. It's not just users, but on designers, platforms, and policymakers as well.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Pooja, based on your models, you recommended that the platform change how they display likes and comments and even introduce ways to slow down feedback. If you need to advise to a platform CEO, what is the first thing design change they should do?
Sure, this is a very genuinely difficult challenge, because the business models, majorly most of the digital platforms, these are built around maximizing attention and time on platform.
Mm.
So features that support well-being can directly conflict with these metrics that derive revenue. So we shouldn't assume that platforms will self-regulate in ways that meaningfully reduce the engagement.
Mm.
So that said, I don't think the solution is to treat social media as an inherently harmful, or to try to prohibit the engagement. And these platform provides real social and informative value. The question is how to hold them accountable for what how the engagement is engineered, and to ensure that the costs are not entirely by the user.
Mm.
So there are directions, like one could be transparency. There should be platforms are required to disclose how their recommendation systems work, and what engagement maximizing these mechanisms are in play, so that what is known about the behavioral risk associated with these continuous feedback loops. And the second is uh, it could be user centered design protections. So they can require like this meaningful notification controls. Not all the time the notification blinks and we are checking our phones. So optimal removal of public metrics, and there can be age safe metrics which are already there in few platforms. And user choice should be there above this algorithmic feeds all the time. And
Mm.
the third, it could be like independent research at present, and including myself, like significant barriers are there while evaluating the behavioral consequences of platform design, while collecting data as well. So because reliable data access is so limited, so that needs to be changed. And And finally, we could emphasize on the risk, this sensitive interventions rather than overall this blanket restrictions. Not every user is equally vulnerable. So platforms should expect it to identify and mitigate these harmful engagement patterns without penalizing that this beneficiary participation. So this is how we could do. And we don't need less engagement, we need accountable engagement. And right
Mm.
now the accountability is missing, so that's the issue.
Oh, these are some great design change ideas, Pooja. Now that the PhD is done, what is next for you, Pooja?
Yeah, it's great. PhD is finally done. So I had this in my third study. I proposed my conceptual framework, SSR framework, and it is the starting point. And I want to extend it basically. And my PhD thesis is about exploring dark side of social media and select studies using big data on Web 3.0. And since when I joined till now, there has been lots of changes in big data and the way we understand data. So I'm exploring through those directions as well from computational perspective. As I'm joining OP Jindal Ideas, their interdisciplinary school as a data science faculty. So I want to firstly my doctoral research is basically it's primarily based on Twitter, X data, and behavioral traces. So the framework needs to be tested across multiple platforms and wherever possible through longitudinal based studies and designs that establish causality like more rigorously rather than strong associations. The second direction is about the evolving attention economy, right? So the social media is already moving beyond these traditional likes and followers towards creator economies and the monetized this engagement. And we are beginning to see systems where attention is not only socially rewarding but nowadays economically rewarding as well. It's no longer social currency, right? So and that may make compulsive participation even more deeply reinforced. So the psychological stake changes when your livelihood depends on your metrics. So the third direction is AI governance, and as platforms increasingly they are deploying this generative AI, personalized recommendation systems, and the conversational agents. So we need to understand how these systems shape behavior, autonomy, and the vulnerability and well-being at a scale. So these are not abstract concerns. They are already shaping how billions of people engage with the information and with each other.
Wonderful and good luck. Pooja,
Thank you.
thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your
And
perspective on the dark personality traits driving social media addiction. We wish you the best of luck as you begin your exciting new chapter at OP Jindal Global University.
many thanks, Professor, and thanks for this opportunity.